What is up, everyone? We got some chill music for a chill episode. Thanks for tuning in to That Game Rules, another retro gaming podcast. We're taking a break from our usual game of the week to talk about those little power pads that make it all possible, those controllers. We're going to talk about some history, some facts. We're going to hear some of your thoughts. We're going to play some music, and I'm going to rank my top 10 favorite controllers ever, from Nintendo to Sega, PlayStation to Xbox. Whether you're a controller chucker or you prefer to bite through the cord in anger, just sit back and let the nostalgia flow today. I'm the host of this playhouse, Scuba Steve, born in '84 with an NES controller in my hand, and my mom has not forgiven me for destroying her poor vagina.
Well, excuse me, princess.
Yeah, it's going to be a silly episode today. I've been away for a while. I've been so freaking busy in real life. I'm happy to get back behind the mic, talk about the video games I love. Email the show at thatgamerules@gmail.com. We're going to talk games, controllers, light gun versus super scope, 80s movies, whatever you're up for, we're going to talk about on this podcast. Normally, we're talking games, but I've been super busy, like I said, with the fam, so we're going to change things up. We're going to keep it fresh. We'll do a little top 10 ranking of controllers today. Recording in the dungeon again. I hope everyone's having a great summer so far. Like I said, it's going to be a chill episode. No real prep for this week. I'm just going to ramble about some controllers. I've got a bunch of new stuff going on. I've got some new setups here, some new buttons, some new ways to keep this podcast growing, or at least keep it entertaining for me. I mean, like I said, I was crazy busy. School's out, and it's like I thought summer would give me some more free time, but thankfully we're getting the use out of these Cedar Point passes. I got the family. We're doing just a lot of family stuff. I did a DC trip with my kid for robotics, and there has just been no time to play video games lately. That's why we're just going to do a ranking episode, and then I'm going to get back. I've been getting back into my games, but I also got to kind of throttle back. Besides the busy schedule, the traveling, which I usually never do, and then I want to play some modern games as well, so I got to kind of throttle back. I want to keep the episodes that I do make for the show, the half-ass quality everyone has grown to expect from this podcast. Personally, like I said, I was in DC, and I have a real... this isn't a normal episode, and I have a real internal battle with myself between, like, keeping things very strictly video games or really turning this into the digital journal of my life with opinions and things. When it comes to video games, I think, it's the one thing that I can have in common with people that I might not disagree with other things in life. It's a connection point. So I don't like to bring the episodes down with any sort of negativity when I'm talking about these video games. There's plenty of that on the internet already when it comes to this gaming community. So I like to keep those episodes positive. But since this is a kind of weird episode, if I go off the handle a little bit, let me know what you think about it, because I do have lots of opinions on things. We'll get into the games. No time warp this week or anything like that. Or we'll just get right into this ranking, and maybe I'll just go off on stuff as we go. There are a couple of rules, a couple of caveats here.
Hey, listen!
We're not going to do any of the weird stuff, so no Power Glove, Virtual Boy, no plastic guitars, none of the third-party controllers. We're doing no handhelds either, no Game Boy, Game Gear, Nomad, Game & Watch, all those things. This list is going to be my favorite controllers, not necessarily what is actually the best. You decide, you tell me, email me, let me know what you think. I'm going to play some music clips as we go from the system. Or a game that kind of reminds me of that controller when I talk about it, brings memories of that. And lastly, the runner-ups, we'll do kind of as we go. I won't tell you what controllers didn't make the list quite yet. I won't tell you what controllers my hands have never touched. We'll just kind of go over that as the list goes so that we kind of avoid spoilers there. So let's get into it. I'm going to play my first clip. We're going to talk about number 10, my favorite controller ever. That, my friends, that's Mario Kart 8. And no, I'm not talking about the freaking Wii U. I'm talking about the Switch Pro controller. You're hitting number 10 on my list. Some of the games that I've ran through with that baby: Mario Odyssey, of course, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. I burned through Hogwarts Legacy on the Switch. Lots of indie and retro games. It's the portability of the Switch in general that makes the Joy-Cons acceptable to me. But I'm talking about the Switch Pro controller. It's like Nintendo finally gave up, just made that normal controller. It's like it's got nothing special. It's the basic of the basic. But if you don't know, spoiler alert, I freaking hate the Joy-Cons. I hate motion controllers. I've been indifferent to it, but now I've decided to add some stank to it. I'm going to add some hate to it. I'm going to practice new sound, my kind of new sound setup as we go through this here too. So here's a sound. I hate Joy-Cons.
You son of a bitch.
And we'll scream in there too. It's how the Joy-Cons make me feel. But the Switch Pro controller, it's bottom tier. But it only gets better from here. I posted this original, or there's going to be a lot of N64 talk today, because the original thread I posted over on Facebook was essentially a kind of a half troll post. I said, what is the greatest controller ever invented, and why is it the N64? And you can imagine a lot of fun comments coming off of that. I didn't realize the hate for that N64 controller until I started getting back into, I guess, the online video game community. I thought we all loved the N64 and everything about it. Maybe it was just me. We'll talk about that silly 3-pronged controller. Where's that going to end in the list? You're just going to have to wait and see, but there is going to be a lot of N64 talk. But as far as that Switch Pro controller, Hector here, he says he likes the Wii Classic controller and the Wii U Pro controller. I remember that Wii Classic controller. That's what, when it came to the Wii, that's what I was playing my old retro games on. It was like every Nintendo system I buy, I swear where do I go to download my old games so I can pay Nintendo for Super Mario 3 for like the 8th time when I go to download that. Now I just pay them monthly, I guess. So they won with that one. But then Lewis here, he says nunchucks. And I think that's a troll. That's got to be joking. Who likes the nunchucks? Ramiro says, I just got done playing Legend of Zelda on the OG NES, and he's working through Zelda 2. It's the first controller, but honestly, it's pretty comfortable and simple. Control pad goes up, down, left, and right. Then you have 2 action buttons, a button for start, 1 for select. But he says modern controllers, I think the Switch 2 Pro controller is really the ultimate form of a game controller. So he's throwing some love to Nintendo's version of their ultimate controller. I think the Switch 2 Pro controller is pretty similar to the original Switch controller. I guess I haven't played the Switch 2 Pro controller yet, but when it comes to the Switch, I don't like the Joy-Cons. Oh, there you go. The Joy-Cons are not anywhere on this top 10 list. I suffer through them for the portability factor, but even when I have it, even the Switch 2, which is tighter, like I don't like this loose feeling of these Joy-Cons. They kind of wiggle it's like I prefer, my daughter has the Switch Lite, the solid piece. Like I would prefer that in my portability, even though I'm not really playing the Switch on the go a lot because I don't have time to play anything. If anything, I'm playing, my little retro, what is it, Mayo Mini, one of those little Game Boy things. I got one of those. So let's move on to number 9 in the rankings. All right, that is Sonic Adventure. If you don't know, I'm talking about the Dreamcast controller coming in at number 9. We're going to get into some more facts now as we go through kind of these controllers and stuff. Some of the games I burned through on Dreamcast, we were playing some NFL, some heavy NFL Blitz. I remember the weird Seaman game with the microphone. You raised little human-faced sea creatures. And I was playing a lot of Crazy Taxi, a lot of sports games, even though I wasn't really into sports games. We were playing them back then. That thing, it was like a spaceship controller. It was kind of like holding a giant like dinner plate with wings. It was a beast. It was a big boy. The Sega Dreamcast controller, released in 1998, was a revolutionary piece of hardware. It is historically famous for pioneering analog triggers using early Hall effect magnet sensors to prevent stick drift, and that unique controller bound cable that people talk about, and the dual expansion slots there. So let's break down a few of those. It had, quote, pioneering Hall effect technology, and this is long before the modern stick drift became an issue. Looking at you, Nintendo. The Dreamcast analog stick utilized magnets and Hall effect sensors to register inputs, so this meant that there were no physical potentiometers. My kid can say that. Potentiometers. We use those in robotics, rubbing together. So there's no physical rubbing and wearing over time, virtually eliminating that traditional stick drift. Besides the Joy-Cons and their big stick drift issues, those N64 controllers, those joysticks, you remember you wiggle that controller, you got gray dust falling off of it because you'd wear that thing down to the bone. Also on the Dreamcast, it's got the VMU, that visual memory unit. The controller famously featured 2 expansion slots at the top, but the expansion cards themselves, they housed the VMU, which was a portable memory card, but it had its own monochrome LCD screen. It had a directional pad and buttons. It was like a tiny little Game Boy, but it was the memory card. So you could actually play mini games on the go on this tiny little thing, or during the games, it would display like stats, like health or ammo. And I remember specifically like NFL Blitz was a cool one because it displayed like the play you were picking on your little thing, So remember on like, what was the old Tecmo Bowl? How it had the button combinations you would pick so the person you were playing with didn't know what play you were picking. It was kind of like that. You could do it on your little memory card there. It had the breakthrough analog triggers. So it was the first mainstream controller to introduce the analog triggers. So instead of just a standard on-off button, they were actually pressure sensitive, bringing a new level of precision mainly to racing and shooting games. It's those triggers that now you're getting, a certain amount of gas in the car you're driving on the screen, or the best for just fire and guns when it just came to triggers. That's why I love the N64 with their Z button, the first Z button. That's why we all love GoldenEye. Just having that like underneath the controller trigger was something else. The influence on the modern controllers, even though it was criticized for being like too large and lacking that second analog stick, nobody really came through with that yet till PlayStation really locks down the dual analogs. But its underlying design DNA left a massive legacy. The speedboat shape, the button layout, and the analog trigger setup heavily inspired subsequent designs, most notably the original Xbox controller. What is that called? The Duke? That thing is freaking huge. But the Dreamcast also has that unique cable placement. I see a lot of people complain about that, but it's the first controller ever where this cord comes out of the bottom, and it seems to not make any sense. The thing about it is it had the little hook on the back of it so you could feed your cord up, and now it's coming out of the top. But then that would fall out a lot, and I guess I'm not sure why they had it going out the bottom. I guess Sega designed it this way so the cord could be wrapped securely around the controller body and clipped at the top. But I mean, we were just wrapping cords around controllers. We weren't paying attention to how we were storing those things. It was wrap them up, chuck them up there, and move on to the next thing. Next on the list, we're coming in at number 8. come on. You guys know that's Crash Bandicoot. Have I even talked about Crash on this show yet? I love Crash Bandicoot. I haven't got much PlayStation going on this show. I don't have any of my old PlayStation stuff, but I got lots of PlayStation under the belt. In this case, I'm going to combine it. I'm going to talk a little bit about the PS1 and the PS2 controllers. They kind of go together. But I know that the dual analog came later, but I want to talk about in the history. So far, we haven't seen anything super old. You're not going to see any Atari controller rankings on this. I've told you I've never played the Master System, so that's not going to be on this. And I'll tell you right now, I'm going to talk about the PS1 and the PS2 controllers when it comes to PS3, PS4. I know they kind of nailed their design, PlayStation, and they kept it kind of there as they evolved. But PlayStation 3 and 4 are probably the systems I've played the least in my life of everything, besides even some of the Xboxes and stuff. But let's talk about this the OG PlayStation 1 controller. I mean, some of these games I played, all of the originals. You got the old Tony Hawks, you got the original Tomb Raiders, we got Spyro. Me and my buddy AJ were heavy into Vice City. That was my GTA. All the Resident Evils. I was big into Jet Moto. We would do the cool stuff on the PlayStation 2. I mean, the PlayStation also, the original. You could put a music CD in and play a music CD, and then you could push your buttons to like make your own like laser light kind of show. It would play the music CD, and then it would play like lit up lines and stuff that go with the music, but then you could change it, all the lines, and make the kind of things we were messing around with as teenagers, maybe on some sort of substances. And then we would just play music tracks and make pretty colors and stare at them. So the teenage years, I remember some of it. I don't remember some of the other stuff. So that OG controller, the SCPH-1080 for you tech nerds, that thing launched in 1994. And I realized earlier in the episode, I said I was born in 84 with an NES controller in my hand. I know the Nintendo didn't come out till 85, but the Famicom was out. So let's just say I was born with the Famicom controller in my hand. So this one, PS1, launched in 94. Fundamentally changed gamepad design because it's famous for introducing the iconic geometric symbols of X, circle, triangle, and square. It extended the ergonomic hand grips, and it brought in those shoulder buttons, the L1, the L2, and your R1, R2 on the other side, and that quickly became industry standards. But it went through a couple of iterations over its lifespan. So you got the OG, featuring the digital D-pad, no analog sticks or vibration, but it's that dual analog controller in 1997 that introduced the two clickable analog sticks. That gives you the, L3 and R3. It's got the longer grip design, but it lacked the rumble motors of later versions. All that rumble stuff is coming down the line. That's when you got the dual shock controller. That's the ultimate standard for the console. It added the dual vibration motors and a dedicated analog button to toggle between digital and analog input modes. Fancy talk. Let's talk about those buttons because there is some symbolic button meanings there as far as the designs of these buttons are supposed to kind of mean something. Whether or not people have come to these conclusions after this controller has been out for years, or whether it was actually the design by, his name is T.U. Goto, I think, the guy who made this. Whether or not this was intentional, here's what they're saying. The triangle represents a viewpoint or a head, meant to be the user's perspective. It'll be like your POV button. You got the square, it represents a piece of paper. So that's designed to act as menus, a menu button or a document button. Then you've got circle and X, your standard. I mean, they stand for yes and no, but in Japan, it's kind of different. Circle was universally like a confirm button, and X was like a cancel button. So that cultural difference in symbol interpretation led to years of muscle memory confusion for gamers and importing titles from your different countries there. And it's Sony finally standardized X to confirm with the PS5. So it took them 5 iterations of us constantly using the wrong buttons. Nintendo's over here with their circle and X. And then PlayStation over here. Xbox is in an even different place. You guys, if you play in multiple systems, you know what I'm talking about. You have to, how many times I've gone to a Nintendo game after playing PlayStation, screwed something up because I'm pushing the wrong accept button over there. So it looks like they've made them standard. Some notable trivia, like I said, the designer there, Taiyo Goto, his idea to use symbols instead of traditional letters was famously met with resistance, but ultimately survived and became globally iconic. That must have been a hard fight in the old government offices there to try I would like to put symbols. I mean, you could have put 1, 2, 3, 4. You could have switched to numbers, but to go to symbols that have so many more syllables when you say it. Triangle is a long word when you're talking circle and square versus these letters. It must have just been a tough conversation to have with those bosses.
Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
But he made it through. Again, it had the no Rumble origin. Nintendo released the first Rumble pack, and that prompted Sony to hurry up, design that DualShock the following year. But it's got the flight stick alternative. I know I wouldn't mention a lot of these, but there is a massive twin joystick peripheral called the analog joystick, and that's for those PlayStation games like Ace Combat. Microsoft will do their kind of own thing with their Microsoft Flight Simulator. Hopefully someday I'm going to talk a whole episode just on all the crazy controllers and peripherals out there. So I love talking about the Power Glove and all those weird, obscure systems. Let's keep it moving. Number 7. Talking about Smash Brothers Melee on that glorious indigo purple GameCube controller. All those games. We're talking Mario Sunshine, Wind Waker, Double Dash, all those Mario parties, Mario Golf. I was playing the old Zelda collection on that. I wish I had that old GameCube disc. It was Master Quest, it was Ocarina of Time, it was Majora's Mask, all on one tiny little GameCube disc.
Shut up and take my money!
The GameCube controller itself, released in 2001, is one of the most celebrated gamepads in history, famous for its ergonomic wing grip and asymmetrical face buttons. Its design philosophy prioritizes intuitive blind navigation. It remains highly influential in competitive gaming, particularly for Smash Brothers. Let's talk about some of these key features and designs. This controller, it's when Nintendo went from silly to crazy. When they started coming out with these, when they went from the 64 to the GameCube, which is like, it's fine. I like Nintendo. I like them trying these things. Let's see where this goes. PlayStation, they found what worked and stuck with it. Nintendo continues to push those boundaries. It's why they're still, I believe, a competitive force in this gaming world, not without having these super advanced systems. It's these kind of silly ideas they're doing. So it's got the iconic layout. You got the large green A button. That's the center of the action, flanked by distinctively shaped B, X, and Y buttons, which allow you to easily identify them by touch as opposed to looking. The analog triggers, it's got the L and R shoulder buttons that function both as digital clicks and analog triggers, offering 240 levels of pressure sensitivity.
Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.
And the Z button, situated asymmetrically above the R trigger, that purple Z button features a raised bump on its surface to help you find it without looking. And finally, the C stick, a complete overhaul there. You got your own now little yellow C stick, acts as a secondary analog input. Initially designed primarily for in-game camera control. That's why it's that tiny little, it doesn't really work like a joystick. It's kind of a completely different design, so works good for controllers or camera controls, I believe, although coming off of games like Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine, the cameras can be a little rough. That thing also got Nintendo's first wireless controller. It was called the Wavebird in 2002. So the GameCube, home of Nintendo's first wireless controller, it operated on a radio frequency and became legendary for its battery life. Although it omitted the rumble feature to save power there. And as far as the controller and its legacy, thanks to its incredibly low latency and ergonomic feel, competitive Smash Bros. Players still use original GameCube controllers today via adapters for modern consoles like the Nintendo Switch. Also, the Nintendo Switch released that GameCube controller. I haven't picked that up yet. It's hard to budget for those things. I never got that Virtual Boy either they re-released. I think when Nintendo released the N64 controllers, you could max out at 4 of them, and I bought 4 of them so I could play with the family and stuff. But I haven't got my GameCube controller yet. But it makes me wonder if, usually on anything competitive, I feel like guys are using wired things. Like, do you use a wired controller in competitive competitions just in case you just don't want that millisecond of latency? I know when I used to play Warcraft in some hardcore raiding guilds and stuff, I wouldn't use a battery mouse. It was wired mouse or nothing. You could not risk that thing glitching out on you or anything. You're in the middle of a boss fight. Back to the GameCube controller. Like we were saying, that design philosophy was for eyes-free gaming. The designer here, Shigeru Miyamoto, of course, the main guy at Nintendo, he wanted a controller where the player could instantly know what button they were touching by its size and shape alone without looking down. So you got the big, massive A button, but then you got the B button. That's a smaller little red circle nearby, mainly for like canceling stuff. But then the X and Y buttons were like these kidney-shaped buttons, kind of tucked around the sides of the A button. So it looked chaotic compared to that sleek PlayStation controller, but it functioned brilliantly, guided the player's thumb naturally to the most important inputs, a stark contrast to modern controllers where all the buttons feel identical. Minus, that SNES controller. That's got some funny buttons we'll talk about. Let's see what some of you thought. Will says, I always thought the GameCube controller was made for baby hands, but once I used it, it was pretty awesome. He says his favorite would probably be the DualShock 4. Anthony says the GameCube was better than the 64. I think we can all agree there. And then Darren says, I'm going to say the GameCube controller is number 1 for its analog triggers, incredible durability, analog sticks, and ergonomics. Very closely behind is the N64 controller for its optical analog stick, incredible design choice going optical, and its option to ergonomically hold it in 2 different ways for 2 different games, and its expansion port on the back, and its fantastic colors, which I think is the best plastic type of any controller. Mine is grape and ice mixed together and is utterly beautiful. So we like the GameCube love, and it rolls right back into some N64 love on the back end there. Patrick here, he says GameCube, 64, SNES for the invention of the shoulder buttons. Since the GameCube, all standard controllers are pretty similar with the Wiimote and the Joy-Cons aside. I'd say similar in their own respects as far as Xbox doing its Xbox thing, PlayStation doing its PlayStation thing, and then once Nintendo went Joy-Cons, re-released all their old controllers, there's nothing much they need to do besides their standard controller we've already talked about. Alexander says he loved the N64 controller, the greatest in my opinion. Also loved the GameCube controller, especially playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3. Chris says the GameCube was the best. David says that GameCube controller was pretty dang comfortable in my hands. And finally, Wesley says that GameCube controller was so bad, though. I told my parents not to get me a GameCube because the controller was so bad. Wesley, you're missing out, man. I feel bad for you.
You're killing me, Smalls.
Go give that. Like he said, it looks like a baby toy. It looks like a Tiger Electronic BS. But man, once that GameCube controller gets in your hands, it adjusts on like a nanomolecular level and molds to your hands. You can't even tell. Nintendo didn't even say that technology. That was just a secret. Give it a try. Moving in, we're at number 6. Let's go. Oh, yes, Sonic 2 for the Sega Genesis or the Mega Drive for you people across the pond there. The Sega Genesis reminds me of games like all the Sonics, some weird ones like Vector Man, Earthworm Jim, Toe Jam and Earl, Wonder Boy and Monster World, even some Road Rash, some of those games back in the day. I love the introduction. What blew me away as a kid, going from the NES to the Genesis, was that third button. Talk about blowing your mind. The Sega Genesis controller is an iconic 16-bit gamepad renowned for its sleek design. Looks like a freaking Batman Batarang. It's got the arcade-style layout and a unique 9-pin connector. It originally launched with that 3-button layout and later received the highly praised 6-button redesign to accommodate complex fighting games like Street Fighter 2, beating up cars in that game. I used to who was the fat guy? I would be I'm not bad at I'm not good at fighting games. I didn't play a lot of Street Fighter, but I would be the fat guy and he would do his hand where you just tap it and he does the hand chop, chop, chop. And then I would just go beat up the cars. I would do that fun stuff. See, I know a little bit about Street Fighter. I love this controller. I love the Sonic games. I love that it introduced this crazy third button, and then on all the Sonic games, all 3 buttons do the same damn thing. And you're just spin dashing and jumping. So they're not really showing off the controller with the Sonic game to begin with, but there's plenty more. There's fighting games that third button's going to come in handy. So let's talk about that original, the arcade layout. I mean, the familiar, comfortable configuration. It's got the 8-way D-pad, the start button, and your 3 primary action buttons. We're going A, B, and C on the Sega there. It's got the backwards compatibility, so it uses a standard 9-pin serial port, which allowed it to be used with older systems like the Atari or the Sega Master System. So we're already talking backwards compatibility. And then it's got the ergonomic shape, designed with a smooth, curved kidney bean shape. It was considerably larger than the controllers of the Master System. It's supposed to appeal to older teenage demographics. Sega's already out there trying to do what Nintendo don't when it comes to that controller. And it was the first real, we had our brick, and just to see this curves on this controller, something about curves when we were kids said that's the future. Like everything futuristic had to have curves. You couldn't have those boxy, like everything was so boxy in the 80s. Everything had sharp corners. All the cars were like square boxes. So everything from the future had to be like round. So I like that controller design, and a little bit of love to the 6-button redesign I'll throw out there. That was released in 93. The 6-button controller was created specifically to support those button combos in games like Street Fighter 2. It was a little slimmer, a little lighter. Aside from adding X, Y, and Z buttons, it improved the ergonomics a little bit for those smaller hands. And then it had a mode switch. There was a mode button included on the top shoulder. Holding it down during the console boot up forced the controller to emulate the old 3-button layout, ensuring you had full compatibility with older Genesis games that would crash with a 6-button input. They wouldn't know. So I'm not even sure I ever knew that you could. It's got the I know it's got that button. I didn't know that that's what it did. It would convert it to emulate the old 3-button layout, so you won't crash in games playing with 6 buttons. So I like that a lot. Sega, you got the backwards compatibility coming in. You're thinking ahead. It may not be enough to get you through the console wars, but I appreciate what you're doing. Let's get into it. Number 5, middle of the list, and it's a big one. That's Mario 64, and now we're going to talk about this 3-pronged beauty, this N64 controller. Some of the games this reminds me of, all these games I'm listing of when I'm thinking of these controllers. I'm trying to list games of episodes I haven't done yet when I'm listing some of these. So some of these 64 games that make me think of this controller: Castlevania 64. I played a lot of the San Francisco Rush games, Rush 2049, a lot of Conker's Bad Fur Day, WCW and WWF games. probably the only time I ever played holding the controller with on like the third prong, the D-pad area. Mission Impossible was a weird one that sticks out to me. War Gods, some weird fighting games. Just to name a few. It's our first joystick at home. Although you could grind that thing to dust. Well, at least like the first kind of real. I mean, they had kind of the Atari, but those controllers were designed to like hold this box at the bottom and use this joystick with your one hand. So it's your first thumb design joystick coming out of Nintendo. Famous for its unique three-prong design, revolutionized the industry as the first mainstream controller to include that standard analog thumbstick and an expansion port in the back for accessories like the Rumble Pack. Although it started with your memory card slot turned into the Rumble Pack. We've got the three-prong design. The three handles allowed for three different play styles. They can even had it. They called it 2D mode. That was holding the left and right prongs to use the D-pad. The rarest of the rare. Then you've got the 3D mode, holding the middle and right prongs to use the analog stick and action buttons. And that's, middle, right, okay. Then it's got FPS mode, holding the left and middle prongs. A hidden setup used by games like GoldenEye to simulate dual analog movement. So there was controller options. You could go in and you would change it to where you were moving with the D-pad. So now your right hand's got your trigger. It's kind of controlling the gun and the movement. But that was not how I played GoldenEye at all. It was 3D mode. Yes, it was left hand was your trigger and you're looking, whereas your C buttons were you're moving in your strafe. But put that controller in my hand. Give me GoldenEye. Give me Perfect Dark. Give me Turok. Let's see how this first person shooting holds up. It also had the Z trigger, that center prong featuring a trigger button on the underside, serving as a highly accessible input, often used as a fire button. The yellow C buttons, rather than a second analog stick, the N64 utilized those four yellow C buttons. It had the optical analog stick, unlike modern potentiometers. The N64 stick used an optical sensor mechanism with rotating wheels that tracked light through small holes to register movement. That sounds interesting, and it would cause a lot of issues with that joystick eventually. The accessory port, that expansion slot at the bottom for memory cards, or the iconic Rumble Pack, which at the time required its own AAA batteries. That thing added some weight to the controller. It quoted itself as having easy recalibration. If things started to drift, you could just you could reset it by pressing LR and start buttons together, which I never knew about. If we need to reset the controller, I would just make sure it was sitting upright and you would unplug it and plug it back in. And the official modern releases, you can get yourself that wireless version of the exact same controller for the Switch. Like I said, I bought a couple of those. I have to play. It's iconic to me, the 64 and its controller, because it is the only set of games that I have to play with the N64 controller. And I know some of it's because of the weird button layouts and the C buttons and stuff, but it does not feel natural to not play. It's any other system. I can play Super Nintendo and Nintendo games with the Switch Pro controller, or the same kind of thing with, all the PlayStation controllers are the same. Even GameCube, I'll play regular games with that, but it's got to be the 64 controller for those 64 games. It's the one system I still just have all my original stuff of. It's the one, it's the system I had when I was a teenager, so it's not even like, I just have a lot of memories of it. It's not even the real little kid memories. That goes more to like Super Nintendo and stuff, as far as just really having no friends and falling in love with video games. But man, that 64, there is something about it that just speaks just peak video game craziness to me, whether or not it ends up being the best system of the time. It kept Nintendo alive, even then, just doing their weird stuff. All right, more 64 talk, lots of comments on the 64. for good or bad. Joshua says this pretty much the N64 controller all day. He's loving it. But James chimes in, it certainly is not. N64 is one of the worst controllers ever made. Nando says 3 different forms of grab of the controller, analog stick made for 3D movement, and the Z trigger made FPS games intuitive. PlayStation didn't have sticks up until a year after N64's launch, and the PlayStation controller is basically lifted off of the SNES controller. And that's, I mean, at some point, things are going to be copying. You're going to pull the good ideas from companies, to make your product better. I wouldn't say, I never looked at a PlayStation controller and compared it to, the Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo, the Sega, you start at the beginning. You got the NES with your AB next to each other. You got your Sega where they realize your thumb kind of moves up, so it's kind of like an upward angle with your ABC. Then you got your Super Nintendo that puts the 4 in that kind of diamond shape, which helps your thumb, as opposed to, like, if you can imagine a square of buttons versus your diamond shape, it would be a lot harder to reach those like top 2 corners. So once they just realize that, there's not much you can do after that isn't kind of copying. That's why after the GameCube, all the controllers just kind of stayed the same. Xbox did their thing, PlayStation did their thing. And then again, Nintendo decided on their mobile unit, their Switch, and is pretty much stuck with the Joy-Cons. But even they have their joysticks in kind of 2 different places, kind of like Xbox kind of has their joysticks kind of offset. So there's still differences there. Matthew says, it was designed for 3-handed people. Sega already had it figured out with their Saturn 3D controller, but Sony stole the SNES controller, and Nintendo was kind of in a tough spot. And again, we're comparing that Sony to the SNES. I'm not sure. Sony saw Nintendo do the Rumble Pack, saw Nintendo doing joysticks. You're going to pull those ideas. Tom says, regarding the N64, this is the best controller ever. Gene says, I always thought that for first-person shooters, the C buttons work very well. GoldenEye and Perfect Dark are very playable, much better than the double sticks from the GameCube. And I would agree with that, having the C buttons for strafing and moving, even though it's not optimal for some people versus double joysticks. I prefer those over, I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of the tiny little, feels like I'm shaking hands with a mouse or something, that little C button joystick on the GameCube. Andreas says the N64 was peak at the time. Alberto says, I don't know why people dislike the N64 controller. It was comfortable and you didn't even need to use the D-pad that much anyway. And I agree with that. From a design aspect, it's weird. You got all this whole plastic chunk on the left side of your hands. You're essentially never touching. Maybe it's like a weight ratio thing now, so the controller doesn't tip over. But yeah, we didn't use the D-pad a lot. Didn't use that L button a lot over there. But can you imagine if you just cut that left prong off and you've just got this weird kind of longer alien shaped looking controller? But Alex, he says the N64 was the first console to standardize having an analog stick on every controller, so it's not surprising that it had issues, but it was also great because you could make the analog sticks universal before game developers were going to fully buy into making games designed to utilize it. It didn't take long before Sony realized that they needed to also make analog sticks a standard feature. The design of the N64 analog stick actually sacrificed durability for precision, so it actually worked very well as long as it was in good condition. Speedrunners strongly prefer OEM N64 sticks to this day, though they often replace some of the parts with higher quality metal ones. They last longer if you lubricate them periodically, which I never did or know about. It's a shame that Nintendo never did a good job of encouraging people to do that. They probably also could have done a better job of providing replacement control sticks or control stick parts. So the joysticks, they die the quickest. There are some 64 controllers, some of mine I've got sitting a couple feet away from me. You pick it up and you shake that thing, and that joystick is sitting very limp. It's a very sad, it's a very loose joystick. It's the fact that they replace these things with like metal parts and use those OEM, those original N64 sticks to this day, speaks to the quality of the design, at least when it comes to those 64 controllers. And it was mind blowing to get the Switch ones. you know, the wireless ones they released, and feeling those tight joysticks on those. That was like, I haven't felt that in years because they're all the ones I have are just so wore out. We're getting towards the end here, so we have got 4 left, and I'm wondering if you're guessing where we're going with these yet. Number 4. Oh, if you are not cultured and you don't know, that is Storm Eagle from Mega Man X on the Super Nintendo. Some of the games that come to mind when I'm thinking of the Super Nintendo: Clay Fighter, Earthbound, Mario RPG, the Final Fantasies, Power Rangers, Stunt Race FX, Home Improvement, Super Star Wars series. What else? Real Monsters, Rocco's Modern Life. A lot of those Nickelodeon ones. There was like the Looney Tunes ones too. Roadrunner, I think I was playing a lot on there. So, and the Simpsons games. There's a lot on the Super Nintendo. A lot of games I want to review still. It's obviously one of my favorite systems. Let's talk about that controller. The SNES controller revolutionized video game ergonomics by introducing the iconic dog bone shape, adding the X and Y face buttons, and pioneering the L and R shoulder triggers. It's comfortable. It's hand friendly. It's a design that set a foundational blueprint that nearly all modern video game controllers still follow today. Just like we were saying, PlayStation stealing those ideas. I guess the Super Nintendo in that case did invent that diamond pattern of those 4 buttons, the L and R's on the top. There was a lot going on with that Super Nintendo controller. Mainly those L and R buttons blowing your mind. Now you got the X and Y. But the big difference, we'll talk about the design and layout. So it's got the new 6-button standard. By stepping up from the NES's 2-button layout, the Super Nintendo controller introduced the diamond formation of your 4 face buttons, but it was also one of the first mainstream controllers to add L and R shoulder triggers. This is the dawn of it. I mean, once you added the shoulder triggers, the next step is your Z trigger, and then it's just on to the races from there. But the biggest debate to me that I always try to talk to people about, no one seems to really care, is that concave versus convex button layout. So on the North American controller, the one I've played my entire life, your gray and kind of blue controller, the A and B buttons were colored purple, featured a convex rounded shape. Meanwhile, the X and Y buttons were a lighter lavender and they were concave. They were kind of dented in, allowing players to find them by touch without looking. It's kind of that GameCube design kind of stuff going on there. So you could find these buttons, your 2 concave, your X and Y. But the variation there being the Super Famicom and the SNES in Europe, the PAL version, those controllers featured multicolored convex buttons. So if you look at these controllers, it kind of looks the same, but your Famicom, your PAL version, it looks like a circus. It's weird because I've played with this purple and all these colors kind of go together on this kind of purple gray SNES pad, and then you see the PAL one and it's like green, blue, yellow, red, and again they're all rounded out. So what is your preference? Is it just because I grew up with those convex buttons? I love my old 64 one. I never ended up feeling these controllers I got until recently, because I ordered when the minis were all coming out and I was desperate to get one. They were hard to find. I ended up ordering the PAL version from like a France website. I had to do the Google. I was like translating this website as I was trying to like order and transfer my money to euro and all this stuff. I was desperate for a mini. I ended up getting an original at some point, but now I got a PAL mini too that I really like because I've never had those kind of versions in my house. Besides, the system itself is different. That doesn't really matter. Your systems can look like whatever, but those controllers do matter, those things you're holding in your hands. So finally playing with one of those PAL controllers, it's not a huge difference, but I do prefer my convex buttons. Joe says, as much as I love the N64, the controller is far from the greatest. If we're talking retro controllers, SNES was my favorite, followed by PS1. For modern controllers, it's a toss-up between the PS5 and the GooKit Elves 2 Pro. So I don't know what that is, but as far as third parties making modern controllers, some of these things are crazy. Like the 8-bit Do is fantastic looking.
Shut up and take my money.
These guys are making, it's all come down to it. Now we all know what we want and what we want to play with in these controllers. They can be wireless. They're half mixtures of, it's like a Super Nintendo controller. This one I'm talking about in general, like a Super Nintendo controller that we know and love, but now you've got your two DualSense joysticks kind of on it. So shout out to those third parties. I'm not mentioning a bunch here. Some of the old school ones, because I'd like to talk about that in its own episode. But some of the old school ones I loved were those just the turbo buttons. It was just a little switch. And then when you activate that switch and just hold A, and it would just do this like super tap. Sometimes it would glitch out the games. It was just all sorts of fun stuff. Give me some of those turbo button controllers. Throw some freaking Game Genie in the mix. And things are just, we'll see if we can burn the Nintendo down. See if that thing will catch on fire. We're getting down to the nitty gritty on this list. Coming in at number 3. And this one might surprise some people.
Asylum remains under lockdown, its staff at the mercy of the rampaging inmates. Just 10 minutes ago, we received this taped message.
Greetings, Gotham! Joker here! Arkham is mine! Soon I'll unleash madness untold onto the streets of Gotham. But first, direct your eyes to the rooftops and witness the final destruction of your dear Dark Knight.
We've been circling the tower since this...
Yes. Number 3. My favorite controller ever is going to the Xbox 360. I do not talk here. You're going to get a little, here you go, Xbox. I don't talk about Xbox a lot on this show. Let's send some love to that Xbox 360. I picked that thing up just randomly on a whim when I was getting, I forget, it was like, I was at Best Buy or something for some reason. Anyway, it was the Star Wars 360. I ended up swooping up. So it's like the R2-D2 console. And then it was the gold C3PO controller. It also had the Kinect. I think that's kind of why I was looking into it. Which, of course, I end up hating all this motion stuff anyway. But the kids, they were playing Fruit Ninja or whatever, some of the weird Kinect games. Oh, I think it was Star Wars Force Unleashed. I think that's what did it. I really wanted to use the Force in not without controllers, So I was interested in that Kinect, using the Force type of game. And of course, all motion games just ended up sucking anyway. But some of the games I played on the 360, besides Force Unleashed, I played the Telltale games, which isn't groundbreaking. I need the biggest game with the best specs to run these Telltale games. But I do remember playing those, The Walking Dead, and I think The Wolf Among Us. I think that one's even got a sequel coming out now, decade later. The kids, they were playing, my oldest, I'm sure he was playing some sort of Call of Duty and all the actual cool games kids were playing. But as far as that 360, released in 2005, and that controller is widely considered one of the most influential game pads ever made. Although it's pretty late. It just kind of standardized it. They shrunk down their giant Xbox controllers they had. It set the modern standard, I guess, for that ergonomic design. It introduced the iconic centralized Xbox guide button and established X input as the default protocol for PC gaming. Now, I don't know what that means, but let's talk about some of these facts. It's got the pioneering shape and was designed to fit comfortably in a wider variety of hand sizes compared to that original Xbox Duke controller. And the button layout standardized the asymmetrical analog stick layout that remains an Xbox staple while featuring a digital D-pad, 2 analog triggers, 4 face buttons, and start and back menus. So the Xbox has that Yes, the asymmetrical analog sticks. Your left is a little higher, your right's a little lower. But some of the real cool things about the Xbox 360, the wireless specs. You could get up to a 30-foot range. You could connect up to 4 controllers. Then they were powered themselves, the controllers, with 2 AA batteries. Eventually, I think I had a rechargeable pack for it. Again, the first kind of wireless game here came with the Xbox 360, and that really changed it up. No more kicking over those wires, knocking systems off of your big wooden entertainment center. The Xbox also featured that PC compatibility. So because it's Microsoft, now they've designed these controllers for computers and kind of hit that market. Where they can really lock down, Logitech and all these kind of computer controllers. But you can just take your Xbox controller. I've got mine linked to my laptop to play games on there if I ever get the time. But we got some unique facts about this Xbox 360. Submarine use. The U.S. Navy uses modified Xbox 360 controllers to control periscopes and photonic mass on Virginia-class submarines. I've seen teams in robotics themselves use like PlayStation 5 controllers they're using to control their robots. I've seen Xbox controllers. I've seen Logitech controllers because I think those are the cheapest as far as like in our robotics controlling this stuff. I know when it comes to submarines and Xbox controllers, that kind of got their own news story. I don't remember the name of whatever that submarine is. It was full of the rich people that imploded at the bottom of the ocean. Some rich guy built his own submarine and the thing sucked itself into eternity, and they were making fun of that because he was like Xbox controllers. I'll make fun of that as well with billionaires building stuff and making jokes about it. I've got a dark sense of humor, but the controller itself, I can see you can do a lot of inputs on those controllers. So if I were to design a submarine, I'd have an N64 controller. I'd have 2 of them in there. You'd be doing it like the Pod 1, like the Star Wars pod racing, where you can hold both controllers and joysticks. That's my submarine. So you guys can make fun of me when I go and implode. It was also a first party wireless pioneer in that it featured a 2.5 millimeter headset jack. So you can put it right into the controller itself. It started that whole process. But now we are getting down to number 1 and 2. I'm pretty sure anyone listening is going to guess what one of these controllers is, but I'm wondering if you guess what the other one is. Number 2, my second favorite controller ever. That's it, baby. The NES. You knew it was coming. You know I love that little gray brick. Some of the memories for me, Zelda 1 and 2. I got a Zelda 1 episode I'm working on. That'll probably be the next That Game Rules. We got Blaster Master, Adventure Island 1, 2, 3, Dr. Mario and Tetris, RC Pro-Am, Paperboy, Ikari Warriors 2, Friday the 13th, Maniac Mansion. I'm just listing tons of games that I'd be interested in playing and doing episodes of. The NES controller revolutionized gaming by replacing joysticks with an oblong, rectangular brick design created by Nintendo of America employee Lance Barr. So created by an American employee, I guess, because Lance Barr, I can say that name. I can pronounce it. It was built around the iconic cross-shaped D-pad and set a standard that has influenced nearly every video game pad since. This is the one we can say everybody copied off of. Although they couldn't copy that D-pad, we'll talk about that. The key facts about this legendary peripheral include the D-pad origin. While introduced earlier on the Game & Watch Donkey Kong unit, the D-pad on the NES popularized thumb-based movements, allowing effortless, precise navigation, mainly on those tough platformers like Mario. Can you imagine holding one of those Atari joysticks. You're holding it from the bottom, like you're holding like a nutsack, I guess, and then your joystick on the top. And so if you do that in front of you right now, it looks awkward. And then so don't do this in public, but you're going to go on the bottom, you're going to cup it, and then you're going to kind of grab the shaft of the joystick, and you're going to move that around. So I'm doing it right now, and it doesn't look don't do it in public. Don't do it on the subway. But imagine playing that of like a Mario game, of trying to make those jumps with a button on top of a joystick. You're wiggling around. The D-pad has changed all of that. It's got the face featuring only 4 inputs, the directional pad, the red A and B button, and the start and select buttons. Just brilliance in its simplicity. But check out this, the Famicom microphone. In Japan, the original Famicom featured the 2 hardwired controllers. Controller 2 lacked start and select, but featured a built-in microphone that could be used for certain games, like The Legend of Zelda, to defeat certain enemies. You're going to get this. Because I'm not sure about any of that. I don't know much about the Famicom. But believe it or not, on that one, I got to look at. I'm doing a Zelda episode next, so I'm going to figure out if you could use a microphone. I know that the freaking DS at one point had a microphone. It was making me yell into games and whistle into some Zelda games that I didn't enjoy. But the dog bone redesign, that's in 1993, and I've still never seen one in real life, I think. So Nintendo released the updated ergonomically curved controller, affectionately known as the dog bone, which then would roll over. It's kind of like the Super Nintendo. The NES one was a bit more dog bone. It had more round up the top, like a literal bone, whereas the SNES is pretty flat across the top. But that went to Nintendo at their end life there released the top loading NES system. It was smaller. The carts stuck in the top like they do Super Nintendo, which made it pretty tall as opposed to those SNES carts. And then it had the dog bone controller, which was white and like red buttons. The same way the SNES, they didn't change the controller, but they released an SNES Mini at the end of the SNES life, a smaller compact version of the Super Nintendo. And I think they stopped that after, I guess, the 64, as far as system redesigns, because by then things are moving along a little faster. The tech specs on that controller, it's model NES-004. Button data is processed by a single integrated circuit. This chip gathers the 8-bit state of the buttons and sequentially shifts the data to the console as a digital signal. More words and stuff.
You're killing me, Smalls.
And the modern revival, of course, Nintendo offers those wireless replica. Although I don't like them, they have to be slid onto the Switch to charge, and then they're not really the same on the top. But I guess I never play them like docked when they're like on the sides. That's just really weird. Troy here says, I actually dislike most modern controllers. Like when the buttons were just A and B, it was perfect. When they started to add X and Y and also different shapes and whatnot, it got confusing to me. To this day, I still have problems remembering where Y and X are and have completely forgot the layout of PS controllers. I never played Xbox much, so I still don't know the layout. I honestly wish one of them would have just numbered them 1, 2, 3, 4, similar to a PC keyboard. So I'm going to be that guy and say keyboard and mouse is the most advanced and functional when it comes to gaming. Plot twist, you had me going. I thought we were going NES controller for the win, and you slide out of left field with a keyboard and mouse comment. That's well, I like keyboard and mouse, of course, games like Warcraft, any sort of top-down SimCity, Command and Conquer, games with lots and lots of buttons or just requiring a lot of screen clicking where I played Super Nintendo SimCity. It's not great, although maybe with that Super Nintendo mouse. But I'm not sitting, I don't want to sit at a computer to game. I want to kick back in a chair or a couch to really enjoy my gaming. And I'm not going to I'm going to hurt my back if I'm trying to type or do anything weird. When I used to be locked in at WoW, it was my computer desk. I was set. I was sitting in that chair and not getting up for hours. But Now I'm a bit older. I want a game. I want to sit on the couch. I want to sit on a chair. So it's going to be some sort of controller. Anything to avoid just doom scrolling on your stupid phones. Some fun stuff, because Nintendo has lawyers. Nintendo patented the cross D-pad. So if you ever played a Sega Genesis or an original Xbox, you might remember their D-pads felt mushy or looked like a disc rather than a crisscross. Definitely on that Sega controller and the Xbox. This wasn't just a stylistic choice, it was a legal necessity. Nintendo invented the cross-shaped D-pad in 1982 for that Donkey Kong Game & Watch, used it on the NES. The design was brilliant, simple plastic cross with a pivot point in the center, preventing you from pressing left and right at the same time. It was so effective that Nintendo patented it. And this patent forced competitors to design around the cross. So Sega used the floating disc, so it's technically not a cross. Sony, they used the 4 separate buttons that looked like a cross, but were technically disjointed on the inside. If you look at the PlayStation controllers, it was like there were separate buttons as far as their D-pad. A lot of people prefer that. I still like my D-pad. And it wasn't until Nintendo's patent expired in 2005 that other companies could freely use that clean, simple cross design without fear of a lawsuit. So nowadays, you see that thing everywhere. And we've come to it. I'm wondering if anybody can guess. You know I'm a Nintendo fanboy. Have I listed all my favorite Nintendo controllers? What's going to be in the number 1 spot? The sound clip I'm playing for this, it's a bit longer, because I really enjoy it. It means a lot to me. Let's do it. My number 1 favorite controller of all time, coming from this 43-year-old retro gaming nut.
Look, I don't mean to be rude, but I really don't do small talk. Nice to meet you, too. So you want to go through more of your crazy stories? My crazy stories?
But how are we supposed to get out of here if we don't start to trust each other?
I don't need your trust.
Well, I kind of need yours.
2, 1, go!
I took inspiration for this story from when me and my sister were younger.
Look at all of this. It's amazing. I base the story around my dad. All I can do is write this silly story. Oh, we'll face it together. We got this.
Yeah.
If you don't know, even that trailer, it got the little PlayStation logo. If you don't know, that's Split Fiction. I played that on the PS5. I played it with my wife. So my number 1 favorite controller is going to be the PS5 DualSense, and I will get into it in a second. But Split Fiction itself, even playing that trailer, it gets me emotional. It's the first game I've played in 30 plus years. There's been great games, but it's always been essentially more of the same. It's like the graphics have gotten better. We can do this now. We can kind of do, it's all almost expected, but there are just few spots in my gaming history, in my gaming life, that really, for lack of better terms, blew my mind. In this case, it made me feel like a child again. Playing Split Fiction does things, not just good graphics, and not just, games have that. Better graphics, better story, better character development. You're playing like it's a movie. We've played The Last of Us. It's a great game, as expected. But playing Split Fiction was they did things in that game that I didn't think you could do in video games. So it was very childlike. It was very fun. It was very emotional to go through because I also really connected with the characters and stuff in that game. It's just a good game. And I just want to shout it out again. The way it was like I was smiling while playing. And Mario Wonder did that to me when I played that a few years ago too. Just seeing, I'm like, they can still surprise me with some of this 2D Mario stuff. And Split Fiction did it for me, but with gaming in general, there is still milestones to be had when it comes to gaming. And it's not just better looking grass or better looking shoelaces in Call of Duty. It was the way they were, and it reminds me of like Portal. They're just doing things in games. I assume it's because these systems are so beefy they can handle latency and these kind of things. But it was shifting gameplay at the end of Split Fiction with like this line on your screen shifting between the fantasy and the sci-fi. You'd have to play it to know. So hopefully go play it. It's a 2-player only game, so that adds to the emotions of playing this game with somebody. I can't go off. I've talked about Split Fiction a lot. I love it. It's available everywhere. It's even on the Switch now. Play it with your loved one. Play it with your kids. I believe between Split Fiction and the other game they made, It Takes Two, this company, which is also a 2-player only game. This stuff is like couple therapy too. Play these games with your significant other. It Takes Two is literally a game about 2 parents that are split up and trying to work back together to like save their kid. So there's a lot of themes that can draw you into these games as an adult. Anyway, I got to actually talk about the controller. This isn't a Split Fiction episode. The PS5 DualSense. I've gotten my run on Split Fiction. I played Astrobot, Red Dead 2, the newer God of Wars, the newer Resident Evils, Star Wars Fallen Order. I played some of the new Tomb Raider. This thing in your hand, it's heavy. This is the adult controller. Holding this thing next to holding like the Switch Pro, holding this thing's like holding a freaking gun. It's got that weight to it. The PS5 DualSense controller revolutionized console gaming with adaptive triggers and the main thing, advanced haptic feedback. Features a built-in microphone and a create button for media sharing. Don't care about those. Fully supporting cross-platform play with seamless connections to PCs and mobile devices, as most things are nowadays, or at least Xbox and PlayStation. But the core hardware of this thing, the haptic feedback, its dual voice coil actuators replace traditional rumble motors to simulate physical sensations like weather textures or weapon recoil. So it is not just a rumble motor. These actuators, like if you've held the controller and played, but I'll try to describe it to people who may have not played with this controller, who are listening to my dumb show. This thing, like you can feel like raindrops like through the controller. It's hard to describe until you feel it, because even I read it and I'm like, okay, how good could a rumble be? Hold this thing and play a game. And then goes along with Split Fiction, where it's like, I didn't know controllers could do that. So it's fun to still be surprised as a 40-something gamer. The adaptive triggers now, the L2 and R2 buttons can dynamically adjust resistance and tensions to mimic physical actions like drawing a bowstring or pressing heavy brakes. So now these controllers can add resistance to these triggers in an active gameplay sense. So it can adjust the resistance. Like I said, if you're drawing a bowstring, the farther back you go, the harder the button gets to push. It's great. It's got the microphone and audio, includes a microphone array, dedicated mute button. Again, I'm not doing much social gaming. And then it charges. Again, you get about 7 to 8 hours of battery life. Not bad. If you're going 7-8 hours and you're mad because your controller's dying, you probably should take a break. Some comments here. Simon says, nah, and we're still talking compared to the 64 controller here. Simon says, nah, the PS5 and new Xbox are great. Kellen says he prefers the DualShock 3. Alex says he loves the N64, but I'd have to pick the PS4 or PS5 controller as my favorite. Lauren says, don't shoot me, but the DualSense is something else. Everything feels special about it. And then finally, Michael here, he just says, all the PlayStations. They all win. PlayStation gets some clapping. So of all the things, there's a lot of Nintendo, a little bit of Sega in there. But man, PlayStation taking the cake. Who would have thought? Makes me want to go play some more Red Dead right now. But I've got things to do. So hopefully we get back to normal. Hopefully I'll drop, if it has to be a bi-weekly thing, it will be. Like I said, I gotta do the family stuff first. They are the priorities. And the episodes themselves, I want them to be good, so I won't send them out rushed. I really wanted to do Zelda 2 next for the Nintendo, because that game's weird and I want to play it again. But I was like, well, I better do the first Zelda, which I also want to play again. A lot of Zelda talk with that old Ocarina announcement. Hopefully you're enjoying Star Fox 64 if you're playing that or that remake out there as well. I'm not sure what else is big and new. I know between the Ocarina remake now, button heads with when the GTA 6 comes out, so that'll be fun to see in those holiday hours or the holiday months there and weeks and all that leading up to that craziness. It's gonna be a fun year for gaming, whether you want that Zelda or you want that GTA. Hopefully everybody gets it in their hands. Hopefully everybody quits complaining about physical versus digital copies. Just, I don't know, play the way you play. I get it. It's getting really weird with the fact none of us own games. You buy a game digitally and you essentially own the rights to it for as long as these companies want you to have it. So I would prefer physical if I can get it, but then sometimes I'm lazy and I just want to play it. So I'll just buy it digitally and download it. And I don't have enough energy. There's other things I would like to advocate for, and I don't have the energy to care much about physical versus digital gaming at the moment. It's the same with other media, movies. Same reason everyone's back to collecting DVDs, because digital license change here to there. I mean, I've got my retro games. The internet blew up and went away. I've got my 64 games. I got some games to play. I don't need the internet. That's the best part about the retro, those retro gamings. See, if you love them like I do, you can fit 1,000 of them on an SD card and you land on a desert island and you'll be good to go. It's about time for me to wrap it up here. Let's get some outro music going. Thanks for listening to this random episode. I love doing top 10 lists. I've got tons. I could do top 10 Mega Man bosses, top 10 NES soundtracks, top 10 weird controller things that I want to talk about. So let me know if there's any top 10s you want me to do, any games you want. Again, it's thatgamerules@gmail.com. Still moving stuff around here with websites, but come find me on the socials. Find me on Facebook mainly, and just send me messages. Let me know what you want to talk about. Other than that, I'm gonna get out of here, go do some more adult stuff. I'll be back with a Zelda episode for you guys, hopefully on Tuesday. I will talk to you then. Everybody have a great week.